Today, we're looking at a pink ink by Sailor, Dancer Pink. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. There's timestamps down below so that if you are only interested in certain parts, you can skip around, but if you've got the time, please check out the entire video. Also, you can follow me over on Instagram, and if you like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Tasha Spectrum with a music nib, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. This first writing sample is done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in order to have some kind of standardization to look at. There's additional writing samples later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it comes in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen. It does have some shade spots. Like if you look at Storia, it starts lighter, gets a little darker, and then gets lighter, and then goes to mid-tone. So there is quite a bit of shading that you can get in the stub. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, still some of that shading that's occurred. Look at how the T is lighter in the. Quick goes from dark to light to dark. Brown goes from dark to light to dark, so it's very nice, and 6 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and all of that same great shading. Look at how the N in brown is much darker than everything else around it. The X in fox is much darker. The goes from light to dark, and 12 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both left to right show plenty of color variation, and we get plenty. Tomoe River. No bleeding, very light Tomoe River ghosting, and that's because it's a very light ink. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 23 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we don't get any. And Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a little lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no real color variation. I'm sorry, the medium does show some left to right, although we're not really getting it in the writing. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that it is wanting to get into this filter paper very quickly because we can see the line above and below where the actual ink line was put, but it largely pushes up if you get it immediately wet. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and it is very permanent, very there. It's a pigmented ink. That's what's going to happen. I expect this to be quite a bit resistant. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles itself very well for a note-taking situation if I wanted to go back and highlight. Water isn't affecting it at all, which is really what I expected based on the chromatography. Pen flush is starting to break it up. It is starting to get speckles of the white of the paper coming through, so it may be only pen flush that you need to get this out of your pen. Now the 1/3 bleach solution is not completely removing it. It's removing a lot, it's discoloring it. But the 1/3 bleach solution isn't doing it. I have not experienced the need for the 1/3 bleach solution to get this out of my pen. I test the viscosity or flow using a tilt test, which I'm going to link the video showing how I do that. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Sailor's Dancer's Pink has a viscosity of 1.28, making this a very, very wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all of those. Now for the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Sailor Dancer's Pink has an average dry time of 13 seconds, so despite it being so very wet, it absorbs into the paper and bonds with that paper very quickly, which is really what we did see with the second chromatography. Instead of finding inks that look like Sailor's Dancer's Pink, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page, so I went with a nice blue-black Krishna's Monsoon. The second writing sample is done on Life, Levenger, and Franklin Christoph paper. Here we're looking at Life paper. Now we get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The medium is a little darker than the extra fine, just a little bit lighter than the stub. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows no color variation. The medium does show some, although we're really not getting it. Levenger. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It is offering some shading. Look at what's going on in Storia. It starts darker, gets lighter in the R to I, very dark at the A. Pink goes from lighter to darker, so it is there. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. Now the shading is a little harder, but it is there to see, like the R and over is a bit darker. The word the T is lighter, he is darker, and it is significantly darker than the word brown above it. So it is there, it's just not as stand out. And only 4 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and yes, it still offers some shading. Look at how brown goes from dark to light to dark. Over goes from light to dark. So it's there, 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and a medium don't show a lot of color variation, although we get plenty in that medium. We do get some in the extra fine. And last up is Franklin Christoph. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 4 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get it, and that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Sailor's Dancer Pink? One of the great things about pigmented ink is frequently the permanence that comes along with it, and this ink is no exception. Now the tone is easy to read and pleasant to look at, which makes this ink win twice. So what nib and pen is going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I found a wet medium to wet broad really put down enough ink that it made it easy to read. It also helps show some of the shading that this ink has to offer. It looked very nice. I do new ink reviews every single day, so if you're new here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.